Hello guys, and welcome to a new Steel Division 2 video today by me, Vulcan. Today I'm going to be going through the second of two divisions that were added in the latest free DLC for Steel Division 2 in Reinforcement Pack number 1. That is the 25th Panzergrenadier. It joins the game alongside the 84th Guards Rifles, which I covered in the previous video, so make sure to go check that out if you haven't already. But the 25th Panzergrenadier, we're going to do the same thing with this division where we take a good look at the units that we have available and build a division from scratch. So that's what we're going to start by doing today. I'm going to jump in more or less blind. I have taken a little bit of a look at this division before, but not so much so that I've actually created an entire division. So we're going to be doing it as we go along. I'm probably going to keep the deployment type balanced. Balanced and Juggernaut are generally the choices for 3v3, 4v4, which is what I play most. If you're playing 1v1, then I'd recommend building towards Vanguard and weighting your divisions towards Phase A, because that's generally where the game can be decided. So make sure you're fighting in the early game. A lot of people put on pressure very early. Being aggressive in the game is what makes you successful. So that's why in 1v1 it's exceptionally good to do that. In 3v3, 4v4 you don't get away with it so much because there's many players that can help each other in order to counter what a specific player is doing. Either way, besides the point, let's get into the Recon tab and start building this division. 25th Panzergrenadier. Looks like they've got quite a few toys to play with in the Recon tab. We've got the standard motorcycle, Aufklärer. These have any interesting vehicles? They do actually have access to the SDKZ247B, probably one of my favourite looking vehicles in the game. It really reminds me of like a modern armoured car. They also have access to the Schwimmwagen Recon and the Kubel, but you'd never really choose these over the armoured variants, the SDKZs. So bear that in mind if you're choosing armoured support vehicles for your Aufklärer. You can probably bring the Spähtrupp in them as well. Yeah, you can. A Spähtrupp in the SDKZ 251 is a combination that goes back to Steel Division Omni 44. But let's have a look at the other units we've got. We've got SDKZ 250-10s in Phase A. There's also 258s in Phase A. That's really nice, actually. A support gun, armored car, in Phase A with Recon. That's pretty damn useful. We've got the SBW 231. You can actually bring these in Phase B, and they have to come in at 1-star veterancy, which allows them to be incredibly effective. These could be very scary. They're very fast off-road and exceptionally fast on-road. Same with the SBW 233, but this has an assault gun. It actually has heat shells. 100mm heat shells. Now, granted, they only have 20% accuracy, but if you brought them in at higher veterancy, then that might go up quite a bit. Not too much, because obviously it's relative to your base amount, so only 5% extra accuracy at 2-star veterancy. Yeah, that's not too great, is it? You'd have to be right next to the unit in order to make those effective. So maybe not the best unit, but since you can get 6 of them with no veterancy, I am tempted to bring them because I'm sure the HE shells, yeah, they do 2 damage. Very nice. Okay, let's bring those as sort of infantry support. And we'll also bring in the 231s, but since we can bring those in B, I think I'm going to do so. Because then I'm also going to bring in the 258s in Phase A. You only lose 1 veterancy, bringing them in at 1-star veterancy. So I think we're going to do that so that we can make them 3-star in Phase A. And that is a pretty nice and solid Recon tab. Very useful vehicles to have throughout the game. I do almost feel the need for at least 1 card of Recon infantry so that we can consistently spot reinforcements throughout the game, but I think I'll come back to it. Right, let's have a look at the infantry tab. So, Ersatztruppen and Feldgendarmerie, in that combination before. We've got the Stoßtrupp in here. These are the Stoßtrupp with 5 MP44s and the Molotov cocktails now. They used to have smoke grenades. I think I preferred them when they had smoke grenades, honestly. Then we got Panzergrenadier. These have the smoke, that's great. Pioneers, you get 2 cards of those. They have the close range grenade. Pioneer Führer, have the close range grenade, but are a command squad. We got the Panzergrenadier with a Panzerfaust, Panzergrens and Panzergrens with Panzerfaust, and Sturmpioneers. 2 cards of Sturmpioneers. Okay, so it looks like we're going to be focused a lot on, obviously, our infantry, since this is a Panzergrenadier division. I didn't have a look at the transports. What sort of transports can we use? Wow, is there no actual half-tracks? For a Panzergrenadier division, that's pretty rough. No half-tracks. We can, of course, bring them in SDKFZ7s if we wanted to, which would provide machine gun cover, but I don't particularly like these because they don't have any armor. So they do get killed by light arms fire. So how are you going to play this then? The Starstrip with MP44s is tempting in Phase A. Making these 3-star veterans, see, in the early game, can rip through enemy squads really nicely and are a great counter to the Superi with the PPSH in Phase A. So I'm tempted to bring these, and I'll probably add them for now, but I might take them out later. We'll bring in Panzergrenadier with smoke. That's definitely a choice I'm going to make in Phase A, unless we go to the artillery tab and we can get Batterieführer. Our artillery tab is pretty big. We get a lot of 1-cost cards here. That may be a good way to spread out our leader units. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. We'll bring those in Phase A, and then I can bring the Panzergrenadier in Phase B, which gives us 6. Okay, cool. So other units in Phase A probably want some Pioneers and probably some Panzergrens, because you don't really get enough availability of Sturmpioneers in Phase A, whereas Pioneers you get 6 on a card. So I think we'll bring those in Phase A, and we'll bring in like a card of the standard Panzergrenadiers, since we get 6 on a card. And we don't want to be bringing them in the KFZ 70s if we can help it. We want them in the Opel Blitz because it's faster. Quite a lot faster as well, so bear that in mind. The KFZ 70 is faster off-road, but at the start of the game you're going to be using roads to get to the contested positions, so it's important that you have speed over off-road capability. So let's bring those in the Opel Blitz, and we'll bring these in the Opel Blitz in Phase A. That should be enough Phase A infantry. For Phase B, probably more Pioneers, or we could opt for Sturmpioneers. I'm not a massive fan of Sturmpioneers, honestly. I feel like their squad size does let them down quite a bit. Although with 3-star veterancy, they can be really, really difficult to get rid of. So it's a gamble. And we get 15 Panzergrens in Phase B without Panzerfaust and 12 with, so we may as well take them with. And I think I'm going to bring the rest of the units now in the KFZ 70s. Because after the start of the game, you use roads a lot less. So I think the KFZ 70 is probably a better vehicle to bring in reinforcements. And potentially we bring in Sturmpioneers as well in Phase B. And that should be enough Phase B infantry. And then in Phase C, I can bring Pioneers. We get way more of those than Sturmpioneers. So I think that's a good shout. And also another card of Panzergrens. Do I want to bring Panzergrens with Panzerfausts? What's our tank tab like? Looks like we might need it. This is actually an incredibly light on AT division, which makes me think that maybe it would be better to focus on the early game with maybe Vanguard even in 3v3, 4v4. Because there isn't any substantial late game capability. You'd have to rely on Stugs. And since you have so little cards in this battle group, that's going to be hard to do. Because you'd probably go A, B, C with the Stugs in Phase B. The Stug G Führer. Not much point in bringing in the Panzer III H Führer. It can be probably a pretty decent infantry support tank. Its HE shell probably doesn't do too much damage though. Probably only 1 damage on that. And 2 machine guns is great. So that would be your use for the Stugs. If you weighted it towards phase A, you'd probably bring 2 cards of Stugs in phase A. And then maybe 2 cards in phase B. I think we're going to stick with balance for now, because I reckon you could probably still make that work in phase A. It's a tough choice, tough choice. Let's go ahead and bring these in phase C. We'll make sure we bring in Panzergrenadier with Panzerfaust, so we can't get rushed down by T-34s. Then we got in the support tab, Flammenwerfers, we've got the IGs. Since we're pushing early with Stossrup with MP44s, it might be a good idea to support them with a Flammenwerfer if we can. But we are going to have a lot of artillery, since the artillery tab has a lot of 1-cost slots. So bringing Opal Blitz is going to be pretty important. Does our artillery come with munitions trucks? It can. Okay, so we'll probably do phase A and phase C, so that we have trucks available to repair stuff if we need to, and also supply our early command. We'll bring in our phase A commander, and that leaves us 2 2-cost slots. I might be able to sneak Flammenwerfers, and I think I can probably bring in IGs. Not sure if I want to do that in A though. It might be better to do that in B. Having that many Stugs in phase B, it might be better off doing this. Now the reason I've changed that around is because you're never going to buy 10 Stug 3s in phase B. You get 1,400 income in phase B. So you'd be able to buy 2 Stugs a minute. So you could probably buy all of your Stugs, you know, if you bought only Stugs for phase B. But otherwise, especially if you're trying to pay for other units as well, it's not really viable. So the Stug 3 G Führer I think is a good shout. This might leave you incredibly light in phase A though, for anti-tank. But you do have other anti-tank options like the Mortars, which are definitely better used in the early game. So I think that's what you would do to supplement, and then just have Stugs for days in the late game. So yeah, if you bring in a card of Mortars in phase A, may as well bring them in with the 1-star veterancy, and then bring them in with no veterancy in phase B. That should be fine. That's pretty nice, actually. That works out well. And that does suit the balanced battle group type as well. Okay, I'm happy with that. Right, let's go into our anti-air tab. Get Flak 38s for 20 mils. Can we bring them in? We can. Okay, that's good. We can bring them in with the SDK of Z11 Flaks. So we'll do that in phase A. And then we'll bring in these in phase B or C. Probably C, actually, because you only have 2 cards. That does cost you a lot of activation points for not much AA. So that's probably the most value you're going to get out of your AA. You have to bring these in phase A, because otherwise you won't have enough availability to bring in all of the SDKF Z11 Flaks. I guess you could maybe... I wonder if that's possible. Do you up vet? Oh, you can only bring these in A anyway. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so you're forced to really bring them in like so that you get the most value for money out of that card. Alright, so yeah, Flak 38s with the half track with the 20 mil on it, and then SDK of Z71s in C. That's probably the only choice I would ever recommend for the anti-air tab. Maybe bring in the SDK of Z71s in phase B, but likely you've got fighters to cover you. Although saying that, I haven't had a look at the air tab just yet, and it looks pretty lackluster. Not a fan of using ME410s as fighters. We actually do get 2 cards of ME109G4, so that's okay. We'd bring those in A and B. That's some pretty good air cover, actually. And then you probably bring in maybe an ME410 in phase A and an ME410 in phase B. These bombers, 250 kilogram bombs, not that great. 8 50 kilogram bombs. So lackluster, and the DO215, not a fan. Right, so that's probably going to be your best bet. You need something to make up for your lack of armor, really, so the ME410s can help you with that. I think that's a decent use. You could bring in some ME410 bombers as well, I think. They're only 100 points apiece. And they'd be pretty good for sniping things like AT guns and support weapons, so that's what I'd bring in the ME410 A1s for if I wanted to. But I'm not sure there's enough activation points to do that at the moment, so we'll go through the rest of the stuff first. Right, in the anti-tank tab, Tank 38, since they've been nerfed... Oh, they actually been reverted? I think they've been reverted. So they have AP penetration with 100 mils, that's really strong. 1-star veterancy, definitely, thank you very much. Not sure if that's going to get changed back. But still, the fact that they come in 1-star veterancy means you can make them 3-star veterancy. If their AP shell drops back to 70% or 70mm of penetration, then I think these would still be worth it. So that's a good choice. Panzerschrecks, I'm not entirely sure are necessary, since you're going to have so many Panzerfaust in your infantry tab. Panzerschrecks can be nice. Let's go through the artillery though first, because I want to make sure that I've got everything I want. What are these? K532 220mm. Well, ain't that something? That is a big old gun, 220mm. That is crazy. Alright, well, what's the accuracy like? Those have 20% accuracy. These have pretty damn nice accuracy, the 100 mils. The 220, these actually have 30% accuracy, so not even that bad. How many of them can you get in phase C? We'll bring those in with some munition trucks. They cost a lot. Wow. 185 with the supply. Honestly, I'm thinking about making this into a juggernaut. Just because if you manage to get into the late game with this heavy artillery, I reckon you could do a lot of damage. Wow. Alright, so 100mm artillery is really good at like counter battery because it's so accurate range. The 150mm are still decent though. What's the HE damage like on those? It might be worth bringing these in B, specifically for counter battery. I'm going to bring them in with the SDKFZ 7 maybe? The thing is with the 7, one really good thing to note is that it does stay around, whereas the SDKFZ 7 11 or SDKFZ 11 and 10, they leave. Like they just disappear obviously when you unload, whereas the SDKFZ 7 doesn't because it has a machine gun on it. So worth noting, but I think we just can bring it in the standard SDKFZs. And we'll bring in the bigger guns in phase C with the munitions trucks. That gives a lot of phase C artillery. What's this 105? That looks really weird. Looks like someone's taken a normal artillery gun and stretched it. Strength of 8 is pretty nice. It does have 5 damage, which isn't too bad. You get a lot of availability. It could be pretty nice for the early game. Its accuracy is not so great though. That's not particularly great either. I think in the early game, mortars would be a good shout. So we'll bring in these mortars in the cue ball. Yeah, that's the best choice. So we got that for the early game support. I'm tempted to bring in these in the early game as well. It could be good for some fire support early on. We can also look at the Nebelwerfer for 42. Like, this thing can be great, but I'm not sure that we need it, because you get really low availability. Now, if we leave the artillery tab as it is, we can then bring in the bombers, the ME410 with the last 3 activation points, or we could put more into the anti-tank tab, which seems like a good idea because we can get Pak 40s. I don't think Panzerschreck's really an option. I do like having the Mortars available though. So let's see. In phase C, let's bring in like just more of these Pak 40s. I think that's a good shout. Where else could we lose stuff? I mean, in phase C, are we going to use this much artillery? I'm not so sure we are. Especially if our 220mm artillery is costing 185 points apiece. I'm not even sure if these are worth it, but I want to try them out, which is why I'm going to leave it in there. But if we're only going to use this much artillery, maybe it would be worth only bringing 1 card of Opel Blitz, because we can bring these in with the Mortier. So we can drop these and just bring 1 and B, which would then give us 5 activation points. So then what we can do is bring in the bombers. Do we bring them in C or do we bring them in B? It depends what we need them for, right? Because in phase B, we won't really have that much artillery online. So it'd probably be better to have them available in B. So we'll bring them in B. We got 2 more points. Don't want to put it into artillery, otherwise we'll need more supply. So the only other choice is either bringing in a second command unit, we could bring in IGs, or we can bring in Pak 40s. Now we're using Pak 38s in phase A, so we bring in Pak 40s in phase B. I think what I'm going to do is we're going to bring in the IG-18s in phase A. And I think I'm actually going to bring them in with the SDK of Z7. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that. Reason being, because I might buy them at the start. So I'd want them to get to their position as fast as possible. So the Opel Blitz is definitely the best choice. Alright, so that's all of our activation points used. This is a division that's a lot more tricky than the last. The 84th Guards Rifles on the Soviet side, I felt like I knew exactly how the division would play out, but with this division, I feel like it's going to take a lot more testing, a lot more playtime in order to actually know what would be right to build. So the way that I've got it at the moment is you can be like kind of aggressive in the early game with the Stoßtrupp, with the Flammenwerfer supporting them. It does kind of require Panzerschrecks though, because Stoßtrupp don't have AT like Sapari PPSH do. Oh, that is rough. Didn't think about that. See, this is why it's so difficult, because you need to have some way of gaining an advantage early, otherwise it's going to be too hard to come back in the late game with this division because you don't have the equipment ready to do it. You'd need to have an advantage early on, and then sort of almost rely on that advantage in order to make more ground throughout the game, with your sort of slowly racking up firepower from other areas. kind of an interesting division for sure. I don't want to sacrifice the Pack 40s in C. I think it's going to be pretty important. I don't want to sacrifice Stugs, obviously. We don't want to sacrifice our tank tab. Maybe... How much would we get for one of these? Oh, okay. Maybe we remove the 233s. Or we could actually remove the 258s because we get less availability and the 233s more or less do the same thing. So yeah, we'll bring in the 233s and the SPW 231s. That gives us 2 points, which we can then also bring in some Panzerschrecks in Phase A. We need them to be on the fastest thing possible. No, the motorcycle. Okay, good. Stothtroper in the Horch, which is pretty much the fastest, yep. And the Flammenwerfers, they're on motorcycles as well. Okay, great. So, in the early game with this division, you would do a Stothtroop Flammenwerfer Panzerschreck push to the contested areas. Then you'd back it up with the Stugs as they arrive. You do have an ME410 to pop any bigger targets. You do have some Pack 38s and IGs. You can get those into supporting positions. 233 is pretty good for supporting your infantry as well against other infantry. So you're going to have a pretty solid early game. Then in Phase B, you got the Stug 3s, which you can accompany your Mortars with. The Mortars will be really, really useful. Marder 2 in Phase A with a 1-star veteran. So you make that a 3-star veteran, Marder 2. That can pop some pretty serious targets and get some really nice values. So I think that's what you do in the mid-game. You can also start bringing in your artillery and counter battery if you are struggling with that. You can also bring in ME410s to bomb support weapons if they're becoming a problem. Same deal with ME410s, bringing in more of those to deal with the armored targets. And then in Phase C, it's more just capitalizing on the Shug spam and the abundance of decent infantry that you have. Pack 40s would be good for sort of ambushing tanks and sponging any serious attacks that are coming your way. So if you are under a lot of pressure into Phase C by a division like the 3rd Guards or any IS-2 basically division, Pack 40s can be great for just hiding in tree lines and finding those side shots onto those vehicles, and then you can push back with your abundance of Stugs once you've kind of cut down on those IS-2s. So that's what I would look to do. It will depend a lot on the map, I think, how this division is used, but I think that's looking the best it's going to get for now until I can actually test the division a bit more. And I reckon this is probably a division that's going to look very different when I actually do a battle group overview, as opposed to what is now just more or less a preview and a quick build. So yeah, let me just add the defenses. Okay, that's my normal setup for defenses, both the AT bunkers, both the machine gun bunker cards, and then a barbed wire and trench. Yeah, so that's it. That's the 25th Panzergrenadier. I think that this division is going to be a lot harder to play than the 84th Guards Rifles, but has a lot of potential. I think if I could sort out the artillery tab better, then it would work really nicely. And I think for players who enjoy using a lot of artillery, this will be a division that's used a lot, because you can definitely get a lot of artillery if you kind of cut back in other areas. That may be a way to play the division, but it's not a way that I like playing Steel Division. I don't like to focus on my artillery too much, which is why I've gone the way that I've gone with my division. The double Stug in Phase C card thing might need to change, I don't know. We will see. But for now, that is it. We'll leave it there. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed that video. Hopefully it's been interesting to sort of hear my thoughts on how I build divisions. I will continue with the battle group overviews of the other divisions in the future. If you would like the code to this division and potentially the 84th Guards Rifle Division, make sure to check the link in the description. But that's it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.